In today's B Block, James Dolan opens up. Just the mere mention of his name makes some Knicks and Rangers fans spew obscenities like, well, New Yorkers. After all, his Knicks haven't made a playoff series since 2013, with a losing record in their last 6 straight seasons. Most recently, the failed hiring of Phil Jackson and ejecting Knick favorite son Charles Oakley from a game last year, claiming Oakley was drunk. The former star now suing him. And yet he's one of the richest owners in sports. Among his assets, the world's most famous arena and MSG, the Forum in LA, and countless other media and entertainment assets. But for all his successes in the business world, he remains public enemy #1 in sports to many. You know, he's got an interesting relationship with the media, but he chose to finally speak. Doesn't really speak that often. He gave an interview to Ian O'Connor. His piece, James Dolan Unplugged, is on ESPN.com right now, and Ian joins us. So, Ian, you know, the big talk today is Dolan possibly talking or thinking about selling the team. The number $5 billion is out there. What did he say to you about whether or not he would sell the Knicks?
Well, Ryan, he didn't say he's selling the Knicks. What he did say is that he could never rule that out because it wouldn't be fair to his shareholders who invest in him, and that his personal feelings about owning the team can't get in the way of making the smart business decision ultimately. And remember this, Ryan, he did a couple of years ago sell Cablevision for $18 billion, or nearly $18 billion. So he's not afraid of making the big deal. He's also now currently selling one of his basketball teams, the Liberty of the WNBA. I understand that selling the Liberty is different from selling the Knicks, but I don't think you can rule out the possibility that 5 years from now somebody else is owning that team. I don't think in the near term it's going to happen, but he's really lost, he told me he's lost his appetite for running the Knicks and his sports teams, and he's so involved in his entertainment properties that I don't think that is an unrealistic scenario.
It's interesting that you mentioned he's lost his appetite for running the Knicks. I think some Knicks fans would look at that as being apathetic. How did he try to tell you or explain to you what that really means to him? And is he aware of how Knicks fans view him?
Well, the one thing, he's aware of it. That doesn't mean he likes it. But he said, listen, even going out to dinner anymore, he needs a security guard. He's heckled a lot. Sometimes people say positive things, and he said, I don't even like that either. That's why sometimes I book musical appearances with my band in Europe where nobody will notice me. So the whole public aspect of being an owner in the NBA or even the NHL is not appealing to him anymore. He's very consumed now by his entertainment venues that he's building in Las Vegas and London and perhaps elsewhere. And so another reason why the idea of him not being the owner of the Knicks in the not too distant future is not far-fetched. And he eagerly embraced the idea, and I proposed to him that there was a belief among some people in the NBA that he had received an offer of $5 billion for a franchise valued right now, according to Forbes, around $3.6 billion. He did not shoot that down. He said, not a concrete offer, but feelers, yes, and that number is accurate. So I don't think he has a great love right now for being in the sports business, and that could lead ultimately down the road to a major business decision.
Now, looking at some of what you talked to him about, one of the things you mentioned to him was, hey, look, Knicks ever win a championship, what's that going to be like for you? And he said something very interesting about maybe not going to a championship parade for the Knicks. I mean, this is what everybody in New York has been waiting for. What did he tell you about that?
Well, he said, yeah, I don't think I would participate in the parade. I imagine he might be on the grounds, but not certainly riding in on a float. Perhaps he'd be concerned about fan reaction even in that situation. But James Dolan, I think 10, 12 years ago, under these circumstances, Ryan, going into free agency, he'd be really thinking an awful lot about Kevin Durant and whether or not we're actually going to get him. I don't think he thinks about that at all anymore. And his interest in the Knicks right now, I do think he cares about the fans and winning and trying to finally end a championship drought for the Knicks going back to 1973. But he's just not consumed anymore by his sports franchises. So I don't think he's sitting around worrying about Kevin Durant this summer and whether or not the Knicks will get him. And I think that was the case years ago.
What are his feelings on Charles Oakley at this point?
Very negative feelings towards him, and the feeling I can say is very mutual. And I think that was a very unfortunate fight that he probably escalated, and I asked him whether or not he really could have avoided throwing Oakley out of the building. Obviously, the images there appear that he deserved to be thrown out, but maybe there was a way of de-escalating that situation. That's not a strength of James Dolan. He does not usually de-escalate, he usually escalates. And in that situation, I don't think you lose a public war with a beloved Knick in New York. And I think it's a fight that maybe could have been avoided, and certainly it wasn't.
Or maybe handled differently. You know, he recently taped a song called I Should Have Known about not being aware of the allegations against his former friend, Harvey Weinstein, in the Me Too movement, which struck a lot of people as a little bit strange considering the way he went after Anuka Brown-Sanders over a decade ago over her accusations against Isaiah Thomas when he was with the Knicks. Does he understand sort of the reaction to that people, even though he taped this song and might have one intention, that people view it very differently given his history?
Well, I'm not sure he does, Ryan. And if you think about it, also the timing of it relative to the lawsuit right now, Harvey Weinstein, James Dolan was a former board member of Weinstein's company and has been named in a lawsuit by 6 women that he, among others, should have known about Weinstein's predatory sexual misconduct. And to sing that song saying, I should have known, when you're being sued for knowing, the timing of that is interesting to say the least. But I don't think he quite grasped the long-term damage that the Brown-Sanders case did to his brand and his public standing. And I think that song speaks to that.
Well, it is a very enlightening article that you wrote. Check it out on ESPN.com. James Dolan Unplugged and Ian Unplugged. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.